Hello, welcome to ER Vet in Arabic, English version of ER Vet in Arabic. If you are new here, this is basically educational channel. Um, it has a lot of veterinary education, mainly in Arabic. This chapter, though, is in English, and it's directed for our colleagues and friends who are planning to open up or establish, or even buy a clinic or a hospital in America or in Canada. Um, in here, we'll talk about almost like everything that we may need to know when it comes to finding a location for a clinic, when it comes to writing the lease or LOI, starting up the business side, the schedules, hiring and firing, getting people from overseas. We'll talk about looking at financial statements using accountant, lawyers, and all these things. Really quickly, my name is Mohammed. Um, I've been practicing in the States and in Canada for about 20 some years, mainly as an emergency veterinarian. I did a lot of ultrasound training and consultations, and then I opened up I was a co-owner and a co-founder of a veterinary emergency and referral hospital in Canada. Um, uh, so uh, that's a brief, really quick here. Today we will be talking um, about the lease. Okay, let's say if you found a lease or if you found a spot that you like, and we'll talk later about how to find a spot and where to look and how to look. But let's talk today about the lease itself, or specifically about the LOI. Okay, and what's an LOI or letter of intent? So let's assume where I found a veterinary. I want to open up a veterinary hospital or a clinic, regardless of the size or intent. But let's say I found a space here, and this is the one that I want. Okay, so how to approach the landlord and what is in the LOI. Um, uh, so uh, I have here an LOI that I'll be sharing with you, and it's an actual LOI that was used for a veterinary hospital. And we'll go through all the little details in it. So when you write these details in the LOI, when you have your own, um, it'll be very helpful not to miss any of these points, or at least try to negotiate these points to the best that you can get, because these points are so crucial, and you don't want to find yourself in trouble later on, or being obligated to do something that you do not want to do or you don't think it's fair to do. Okay. And this is particularly when you are leasing a space, not owning a space or not buying a space. We'll talk about what's the difference between owning and buying, what's the benefit of buying versus leasing, but we can talk about that later. Okay. But for now, we'll just focus into the LOI. Okay. So I'll talk about what's LOI, the condition, when is it binding, the deposit, the terms, the options, the assignment, opening hours, the TI, which is the tenant improvement, the free rent, the moving your space, going back, um, no compete, and selling exclusive personal guarantees. Okay, so I'll talk about these now. Just so as a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm just giving you my personal experience. Obviously, you'll need a lawyer when it comes to writing a lease or even writing a letter of intent. You really want to have a lawyer review this before you sign it, because once you sign it, if it is binding, you are obligated to follow everything in it. Okay, so really quick here. Um, what letter of intent? Basically, it's most of the times it can be binding if it is signed by both you and the landlord. Okay, so let's say I found a space, I like it, I want to lease it to open it up as a veterinary clinic. This will be most of the times binding if it says so, and probably the landlord is not going to sign it unless if it was binding. Okay, all right, so let's move here and talk about this now. Okay, so this is an exacting letter of intent that I personally signed to one of the spaces that I leased. Um, at the very beginning here it says from, and from is the tenant. It will be your company and yourself. Now you try to have your company only signing this, so you are signing on behalf of your company because you do not want to have the liability come back on you. Okay, so if you are in the States, it's usually LLC. If you're in Canada, it can be Inc. or LTD. Okay, so that's like an accounting thing, but long story short, you want that company to take the liability, so it's a limited liability on you, so you're not having any liability exceeding the company itself. Okay, so if you have a company, something goes beyond that, someone is suing the company, they cannot sue you personally. Something happened to the company itself, they don't go after you and your personal assets unless you're personally guaranteeing this. Okay, so this is very important here, like who is signing. Now if you are established, if you have a company before, if you have a big company, big corporate, the landlord may accept it as you being only the company being only the tenant, but sometimes the landlord will tell you, you know what, I want you personally guaranteeing, and that's most of the times. My very first lease I signed, I was personally guaranteeing that. So most of the times they want you to be on the hook. If something happened, they want to go after you. Okay, so from, it will be from you to as the tenant, and to the landlord. Here will basically say the address and the location, all these things. It will say the plan, the block, and the lot number. If you see in here, the first thing here will say it's a binding contract. Okay, so the yellow here, it says binding, so everything in this contract you are obligated. Now this is not the lease, this is not the lease contract. The lease itself will be like a big, this is like a 10-page LOI, but the lease itself will be really thick, like 30 or 40 pages. Probably the landlord owner will provide it to you, to your lawyer, and your lawyer has to read it or review it with you and approve it or negotiate some of the terms. But most of the times here, the landlord has the upper hand because they're the ones who have the space. They're the one who are approving you to go in there. However, keep in mind, you're a veterinarian, so you are providing a value to this plaza. So if this landlord decides to sell the plaza, he's gonna mention that he has solid tenant, so a veterinarian, because how many veterinarians, veterinary clinics that we see closing and just going out of business? It's extremely very rare that we'll see a clinic that closes and that landlord is not able to find someone else to take over. But so you are a value added to the plaza, so you are increasing the value, the financial or the value to that plaza. So keep that in mind when you're negotiating. It's not really the upper hand. It's not like you're opening some sort of a business that will go out of the business very quickly, like so many little, I'm not belittling anyone, of course, but I'm saying, like, some other businesses, smaller businesses, go in and out like every more frequent, comparing to a veterinary clinic or a doctor or a pharmacy that usually will be there for a while. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so now here, so it's a binding term. Okay, now the agreement is binding. Now the terms and the options. So what's the term and what's the option? So the term is the initial term of the lease. So when you're leasing a space, I wanted to have a 10-year lease. I wanted to be able to make sure that I'm there for a long time. Okay, because you don't want to be leasing this for a shorter time and then they come back and tell you, okay, have a good day, we want this place for something else. So this is very important that you have this. Okay, I personally signed a 10 plus 4 5s. So basically I wanted to guarantee that space is mine for 30 years. So what's 4 5s? So the term, meaning like the first term, is 10 years, and then you have what's called an option. So the option to renew, the landlord give you the option to say, I want to stay here for an additional 5 years. Okay, because it says here that one option is 5 years, but I got 4 of them. Okay, so I got 4 times 5. So basically you're able to stay there, renew 4 different times, each time is 5 years. Okay, landlord usually like that, like to have a bigger lease. Now keep in mind that you are obligated for the 10 years. So let's say if you signed this lease and you moved in and you stayed a year or two and you want to move, you're still obligated for the rest of the 8 years. You have to pay the rent for the full 10 years. So this is very important. That's why the liability come on your company and on you if you're personally guaranteed this, unless you found someone else to take over. Okay, let's say you went in there for 2 years, they want to get out of the lease. They will probably allow you to have it subleased. It's called subleased, but while it's getting subleased, you are obligated to keep paying the monthly rent for the whole 10 years. Okay, so the first term is 10 years. Now, 4 terms. So for renewals, okay, so after the 10 years or right before the 10 years expire, that you and the landlord will talk together and negotiate a new lease, probably with a higher rate. So if the end of this you were paying $35 a square foot, here, they'll tell you, okay, now we want 39. And you say, no, we want like 37 and whatever. So you're gonna agree somewhere in between. But if you disagree, you'll have to, there's a process where you'll get whatever fair market value if you disagree, but most of the times you will agree. Now, if you didn't have these options, after the 10 years, he can simply tell you goodbye. Now, imagine if you have a very successful veterinary clinic and you have that running for a really long time, and then after 10 years, he tells you have a good day and leave. And then the next day, he can lease this space to another vet for a lot more money, because now he's selling them the good value, or the goodwill, or the value of being a clinic there. So you do not want to fall into this. Okay, so this is very important. Now, commencement date. Commencement date is the date where they will be the lease will be starting. So there are 3 dates in here. So this is when the lease basically start, and it will start, well, not necessarily start, it will basically start after the expiry of the fixture period. So you have 3 periods in here. The fixture, so the fixture where you'll be like renting, doing the renovation. So you'll be like doing the walls, doing the lead for the x-rays, doing the floors, doing the lights, doing all these construction. So this time it's called fixture period, and this time it's a part of the negotiation. For this particular contract, I was able to get 90 days. Okay, so that 90 days is the period will be doing the construction, and a lot of times they'll give you this time, or you should actually ask to get this for free. So you're basically not paying any rent for that time. So I was able to get 3 months free from basic rent and free from operating cost. So the basic rent, what difference between basic rent and the operating cost, which is here, number 6 here. So the basic rent is basically the whatever dollar value per square foot. So I was paying for the first 2 years $27 a square foot, and then year 3 and 4 30, 32, 35, up until year 10. And this is plus tax. So if you're paying GST, or if you're paying HST, or if you're in the States, it depends on the state you're at, they'll charge you accordingly. But this is the basic rent. Okay, so what's an additional rent? Okay, or the common cost, or the operating cost, they call it sometimes, or sometimes they call it CAM. This is the cost where you'll be paying on top of the basic rent. So let's say the $27 a square foot here is what the landlord wants to go in his pocket. The rest of that, any other expenses is used as well. For example, snow removal, insurance, cleaning, parking, all of these common area. Sometimes they have electricity for it. Sometimes they have like water. Sometimes they have a company, management company. So all these additional expenses, basically the landlord is not going to pay for it. That's why it's called triple net. So the triple net, the amount that the owner is getting in their pocket, is that 27. Anything on top of that, they put this all together, and then they will be charging you back. Okay, so maybe sometimes this is 27 plus 10, or 27 plus like 15. So the additional rent is basically something that goes to their insurance, to their management company, all that stuff, but it doesn't go to the landlord, him or herself. Okay, so you're not only paying 27. Okay, so basically 27, let's say, plus 13, so you're almost paying $40 a square foot when you are renting this space. Okay, so here what you should be asking for, let's say 90 days here, free from basic and operating costs. So in these 90 days, I was paying nothing, nothing, right? So I was paying nothing when it comes to renting the space. So I'm not paying for the rent. I'm not paying also the common cost, which goes to the snow removal, the management company, and insurance, all these things, okay? But I was paying for my own electricity inside my unit, my own water inside my unit, okay? So I was also able to get in here, like balance. Let's say if I finished my construction in less than 90 days, like in 2 months only, I was able to be able to give this time, additional time to get that for free for to operate actually, and add this to my free rent. Let's say if I finished in 2 months, I'm able to get a 1 month work rent free. Okay. So this is called fixture period. There is also another period. It's called the free rent. Okay, I was able to get that 90 days as a fixture period and additional 1 month free rent. So this is negotiation between you and the landlord. Some people can get up to 6 months worth of free rent, 3 and 3. Some people are able to get only 1 month. So there is that's when the negotiation goes. Okay. The possession date is basically the date when you actually have the space. They'll give you the key, and they'll probably put some terms in there that, okay, well, when you remove all the conditions. So what are the conditions? Okay, so the conditions are terms. Okay, here. Okay, so the conditions are terms. For example, when I put in this LOI, or letter of intent, I say, you know what, I'm gonna take this space, giving that I can do 1, 2, 3, and he's gonna say, I'm gonna accept you to be a tenant, given that I can do 1, 2, 3, or you can provide me with 1, 2, 3. So basically, a lot of times, the terms or the condition that the owner will put like your credit application approval. So they want to see your credit history, they want to see your bank history. They may want certain documentations to come in. So this is a one big thing. The other thing, usually they would want you to have like some sort of a permit from the city that allows you to be able to manage and open and operate a veterinary clinic in this area without any limitation. They don't want to lease you the space and then you say, I can't get a permit, or this place is not zoned for a veterinary clinic. Sometimes they can have zones and you cannot operate a veterinary clinic in this zone, or sometimes they'll allow you to do like a rezoning, or not necessarily a rezoning, like an application to give you like some sort of a allowance to allow you to operate a vet clinic in this space. That will involve the city sending letters to all the neighbors. Anyone object a veterinary clinic there, if they do get an objection, then they may say, you know what, we can't, or they still may approve you if that objection is not reasonable. And even if they decline that, you still can go for an appeal, and you might be able to get the appeal approved. Actually, I got some people that said, I do not want this clinic to be there, and I went for an appeal and I won the appeal, and I was able to get this lease actually approved, the permit approved for that leased space. So the landlord is going to want you to have that condition. You also want to have that in your own condition. So when you're writing conditions, you do want to have conditions in there that I am okay with this lease, giving that I'm able to get the permit from the city, giving that I'm able to get financials. Sometimes, let's say if you're going for financials, if you're going for a bank for financials, you want to have that in there in case the bank doesn't approve you. In my case, I was not going for a bank, so I basically did not put a bank clause in there, or a bank approval as part of my conditions. Now that makes your offer stronger. So make sure that when you're writing a letter of intent, you want to have the strongest letter of intent possible. So this way it gives you a good chance of getting approval, but also will help you here when it comes to the money or that you're paying, or the free rent, all these things. Because let's say like we're negotiating over so many things in here. If we're negotiating over 10 things, the stronger your offer is, the more chances that you'll be able to get what you want. Okay. Now, so fixture period is period when you do the construction. Position basically is when you have the keys. So it basically says here when the landlord and the tenant remove all the condition, okay, and when you get the permit from the city, okay. Now you want to make sure that you have in there that you're gonna put an X-ray, okay, because sometimes it's, you can't have an X-ray in there, so that means the whole thing is void, and you don't want to be signing for a binding contract and then you can't have your X-ray in there, okay. And it says here this offer is null and void unless unless agreed otherwise in writing. Okay, so basically, if you don't get the permit, the contract is void. Okay, and cancelled by itself without having any penalties. If you guys see in here, it says basic rent, and this is the schedule. A lot of times the owners or the landlord would want to have an escalating rent. Okay, they're not going to tell you we're going to give you $27 for the whole, or $30 for the whole 10 years. They want to see escalation in the rent, and this helps them later on when they decide to sell that plaza. It can help them actually nicely, because the person who's going to buy it is going to see this as a value. Now, free rent. So free rent is basically here, I was able to get 1 month only, which is okay still. So total, I got 4 months worth of free rent. But if you see in here, he put that it's free from the basic rent, but I have to pay the operation costs. You see this? So I'm not paying the $27, but whatever $10 or $13 that I'm paying, I'll be still paying per square foot for the landlord insurance, for the landlord snow removal, cleaning, all these things. Okay, now, so that was the free rent. Okay, so basically I was able to get 3 and 1. So the 3 was free from every rent. The 1 was only free from the basic rent. Okay, now TI. So what's a TI here, or improvement allowance, or sometimes they call it tenant allowance or tenant improvement allowance. So the TI basically is like the owner or the landlord is going to give you some money to develop the space. So most of veterinary clinics, you'll spend like, over, anywhere, I'll say like maybe 160, 200, 250. It depends how you're going to finish the space. I'm talking about per square foot. Okay. So every square foot, you'll be able to, it will cost you this much money to develop. So you should be asking for the owner to give you money to develop that space. Why? Basically, you're developing this space for the landlord, and when you leave, technically it's supposed to be a nicer place than what he gave you initially. So I was able to get $20 in this one lease, but some people will be able to get more. I've seen people go up to $30, $35 a square foot. I've seen people got 10. I've seen people got nothing, but I should be able to get something here. So basically, you'll develop the whole space. You'll put the construction, you put the new lighting, you put the new walls, the new draining, whatever you're gonna do. And then when you give the owner the receipts that you did all of that, they'll pay you back $20 per square foot. So if you spent like $150, they'll give you $20 back. Okay, but this is assuming that they have to approve all the architecture, the electric, and the mechanical plans first. So you have to take the plans to them, they approve it, and then they come back and make sure that you did the plans according to what they approved. Of course, everything will have little changes as you're doing it, but not major changes. So, maybe a room is bigger, smaller than the initial plan. Maybe minor things here or there are not really significant. And a lot of times you'll be able to do like as-built drawing. So once you're done with that, with the building, sometimes they'll give you like as-built. So it was initially intended to be built that way, but now it was actually built in a different way, or a little bit different way, and this is how it was built. So in my hospital, actually, it was like about 8,000 square feet, and it was relatively bigger. So we had the initial plan, but then we were able to have an as-built drawing later on. Okay, it was obviously a little bit different. Some of these changes may have to get approval again so if you have to change the room from here to here, you may have to get approval from the landlord and from the city. So make sure that if you're doing a major change, you have to get that approval from both, if it is needed, obviously. Okay, now here, when you do the drawing, the architecture drawing, the electric and the mechanical. So the electric obviously is known. The architecture is basically the plan that you start the whole thing about. But then the electric, it will tell you all the lighting and all the switches and all these things. Make sure when you do the electric, you have the X-ray machine in there, which is a big electric, and make sure you have extra electricity. We'll talk about that later on when we talk about the electric, how to do that. The mechanical, two things. So the mechanical is the sewer system, so all the draining system, and you have to have that done appropriately, otherwise you'll have problems later on as you operate. and the other part will be the heating and the cooling system. So sometimes they call the HVAC. So the HVAC and the sewer. So if it's a big place, you have to get these done by a professional engineer. So for example, in Alberta, you have, if it was like 8,000 square feet, you needed to get a stamped by a professional engineer. If it was like a smaller, like 2,000 I think or less, you may not need to do that, but you still have to get it done appropriately still. Okay. Now, so they were gonna pay me the $20 if I had the, all these things approved, the plans approved. And the lease also has been signed. So not this one paper, because this is the letter of intent, but the actual 30-page lease. Okay, and the tenant, okay, and then I started business. So they wanted to see me actually operating before they paid that $20. Okay, so this is when it comes to the TI. So that's part of the negotiation as well. So now let's say I give this, this is the final version that we approved. Obviously this version was not like that. Maybe I did ask for 30, he crossed it down, make it 15, I crossed it back to 20, he approved it, things like that, right? Same thing happened with the basic rent. Now make sure that all communication between you and the landlord are in written. You don't want to have like a verbal communication, just like have it written. If there is a realtor involved, they're gonna do that LOI, and then you cross it, give it back to him, and back and forth. Okay, if you have a realtor involved. This one I did not have a realtor involved, so I was able to save some money in there. The landlord also was able to save some money. As a result of that, I was able to get a better rate than what I could have done if I did have a realtor. If instead that, you still should try to get a realtor, but make sure that that realtor works for your interest, not for the landlord interest. So he wants the best for you, not the best for the landlord, because I've seen problems before. You still should get an advice of a lawyer every time through you're signing a paper. You have to have a lawyer involved with you. So you talk to the lawyer, hey, I'm signing a lease, I want you to be with me with the LOI, and obviously later on when the lease comes in, you have to I want you to be involved as well. Okay, now signage. So signage is very important, especially if you are in an area where you're not really having a good exposure or a good exposure to this street or highway, whatever. You want to make sure that you have your right into the signage. Sometimes the owner will have very limited signage, so they tell you, okay, all you're getting is like 10 whatever, like 1 by 2, 2 by 2, whatever, like one side or two-sided, facing north or facing south. So that's part of the negotiation that you want to have. Sometimes actually they want you to have more signage because they have a lot and no one is renting them, so that shouldn't be a problem. But the problem will be when you're having not enough signage for all the tenants. So if he has like 10 tenants and he has only space for like not a lot of them, okay, or maybe he'll give you the one on the bottom, not the one on the top that can be seen from a distance. Maybe he'll give you the one that's facing the roadway, not the highway. So you want to check that sign and tell him, I want this particular one specifically on that pylon sign, and you make sure that you write that in there. For me, in this particular LOI, he had so much signage, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I still put in there that I have the right to put my signage in there. A mistake I put in there, I did not put how much it would cost, so he charged me whatever he wants. Okay, but I also, it says here I have the right. It didn't say that I am obligated to. So more of a negotiation. If he was gonna charge me too much, I was gonna, okay, you know what, I don't want it. Versus the lease, you're obligated. So if you put it in here, he is obligated to give you that for a particular price, and I recommend that you have that in there. Okay, the tenant obligation. So basically the tenant obligation here, it says that triple net. So I put this here, triple net, basically net lease, meaning he's getting his $27 and everything on top of that is not his. I'm paying for it at the end of the day. So let's say I had my clinic here, there's a few other stores next to me. Let's say like 10,000 square feet total together, and that he's spending between insurance and signage and electricity and snow removal, all these, HVAC, all these goodies. He's spending $10,000. So I'm paying for my share of the plaza. So if I had 5,000 square feet and the whole thing cost 10, he's charging me 5,000 on top of the rent. Okay, so this is also important when you're looking at this. You want to know how much additional rent you'll have to pay. Okay, some landlord can play a little bit of a game. They say management fee. They charge a management fee and administration fee and all these fees. So you want to really take a look at that and see, make sure that that's reasonable. It's not like overkill or anything like that, or anything unreasonable. Okay, so it has to be reasonable, and that's when the someone who knows your area, realtor, can come handy, right? So the realtor will tell you, oh yeah, the average common cost here is 10,000 square foot, because the taxes also applies here. So the city taxes, so every year the city will put taxes on that building. So that part of the tax you're paying still. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're pay how much that is, and that's where the realtor would come to a need for sure. Obviously a good realtor is a great asset to have. Like, I have some great realtors that I'm dealing with, and I love them. They're doing a really good job, but I had some bad experiences before, and that's why you have to know the person that you're dealing with, and you have to have that from ideally someone referring that person to you. Okay, here says the landlord obligations. What's the landlord obligation? So basically they are responsible for the structure, most of the leases, structure of the building, including the roof. So these are the two big things. So the structure, the full walls, and the roof. So this is the landlord. So they cannot come back and tell you, okay, that structure is broken, I'm gonna charge you. So if this does not say that in the lease, you'll end up paying for the structure. If it doesn't say that he's responsible for the roof, you will end up paying for the roof if something happens to the roof. Okay, now when it says the roof here, it's the actual physical roof. It's not the roof membrane. It's not the insulation that they put on top of the roof to prevent it from any leakage from water or snow or anything like that. So the roof itself, the actual roof structure, is part of the owner, the landlord obligation. The walls, the four walls, or the structure, is the landlord obligation. The roof membrane on top, usually that's unfortunately your obligation as a tenant. Okay. Now, that's what the landlord is obligated here. Also, the HVAC is also part of the landlord expense. So the actual rooftop, sometimes they call it RTU, rooftop unit. So the unit on top, which has the heating and cooling, is also part of the landlord obligation. Now, the unit cost itself is the landlord, but the maintenance is yours. Okay, so for him to clean it and change the filters and all these things is your expense, but for them to change it, most of the times is not your obligation. Sometimes you can put in here that you want this in a working condition, so I put this here in a good working condition. So if it wasn't cooling enough or heating enough, I was gonna complain until he needs to change it. Sometimes you can put in the lease that has to be changed every 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, regardless. If it's working good, he has to change it at his own expense. Okay, so that's also part of the stuff that you can put in there into that negotiation. Okay, now the lease, you have to deliver the lease once he gives it to you. So he give you the lease today, you have 15 days to have your lawyer review it and sign it and send it back to him. Okay, here I ended up signing a personal guarantee. So I was personally guaranteeing this lease, not only my company, but personally guaranteeing this lease, because it was my very first lease. So he was like, you know what, this is how I guarantee that you will be obligated for this lease, because if a new company that I started, it was gonna be worth nothing for him. Even the older company that I had, it was not worth a lot for him. He wanted to have like a strong basically guarantee that his lease is solid. Okay, now but I was able to get that only for 5 years. I said, you know what, after 5 years, you'll know that I'm a good guy. I've been paying you for 5 years. I have no problems. My business is solid. So you're releasing me from my personal guarantee. He was like, okay with that. Okay. The other thing too, that the personal guarantee will be transferred to the new veterinarian tenant if I were to sell the business. I said, you know what? If I end up selling this business, I don't want to be personally guaranteeing this for someone else. Okay, I sell the business, you take the personal guarantee from the new person, not my problem. He was like, okay with that as well, assuming that the new person will sign the personal guarantee, which will be good enough for him to take. Okay. Now, insurance. So insurance here, um, most of the landlord will want you to have insurance, which is reasonable. They want you to have insurance for the place and indemnify him. Okay, so what does that mean? So basically means like anything would happen because of your business, he's not liable for it. Your insurance, which is my insurance, is liable for. So someone fall and break their arm, it's on me, even though it's in his property. Actually, it was me who had to pay for it, or my insurance who needed to pay for it. Okay. Not the landlord. Okay, so this is a term there because they say if you were not there, that person was not going to go there. So it's something silly, but they want you to have your insurance in there to protect them. Okay. Now, let's see the use. So the use here basically, I put in there 24-hour emergency hospital, but not limited to emergency surgeries, ultrasound, cancer therapy, all these things. I put that in there, okay? Very important term to have in here would be the exclusive right. So this is extremely important that you have the exclusive right. What does that mean? Let's say if he has a big plaza and then you open up your vet clinic there, he cannot go and give another part of the plaza to put another clinic because that will create a competition that you do not want there. So I said, you know what? I'm the only vet who's going to be allowed to be there. Not only that, but you can't even open another veterinary business in there. Even though I'm an emergency, I'm not going to allow you to open or rent it to another person who's going to open a regular practice. Some people can put in there grooming as well and boarding facilities, but that was nothing that I was planning to do, so I didn't care about that. In fact, for an emergency hospital, if you put grooming and boarding facility, that will increase my business. Okay, but so I wanted to make sure that nothing, no vet in there will be allowed to go in there. Okay, so it's super important. This you should not budge in this. So he shouldn't, he shouldn't, or the landlord should not refuse to give you that exclusive right in there. Okay. Deposit, basically the deposit is like the first month of the last month of the rent. You wanted to have that. So I end up paying, just giving him a deposit before. So the deposit usually goes with the LOI. So once you sign the LOI, you give him the check with the deposit. We'll have the first month and the last month. So first month isn't like now or like after that fixture and free rent period. And the last month is like in 10 years. Okay, so he has to have these, okay, as a deposit. So if in case you don't pay for the last month or whatever. Liens, so you're not allowed to have any liens. So what's lien? A lien is basically, let's say you get a contractor to do construction for you, to do electricity, and then you don't pay that contractor. And here's a $10,000 bill. So the contractor can go to the city or file, or the court, whatever, and file a lien against that building. So it says that this building cannot be sold without paying me my $10,000. So you're getting him in trouble by doing that. So you want to make sure, or he would want you to have no liens when it comes to any contractors, okay? And so just be nice to the contractors, pay them on time accordingly, and have everything written when it comes to what they're gonna do, the scope of work, so you're not having any disagreement. We'll talk about that as well later on. Okay, so here, so assignment. So this is also very important. So assignment, what's an assignment? So assignment basically is like when you want to sell a practice. So let's say after a few years, you find that, you know what, I'm done with owning a practice. I'm tired, obligated, overwhelmed. I want to sell my practice. So you have to have the assignment in there, otherwise you'll be in trouble. So what's assignment? Assignment basically says that you can assign this lease to the new clinic. So, to the new owner, and a vet comes in, wants to buy your practice. They pay you money, they take your goodwill, they take the practice, and you go. The landlord cannot cannot unnecessarily withhold the assignment, okay, assuming that they'll have new credit history, all that stuff. You want to make sure that he cannot tell you, I want a part of that payment. So let's say the new owner comes in and pay you a big amount of money and say, oh my God, you're selling this practice for this much money. Once you give me X amount of dollars to let that assignment happen, you tell them, no, it says here that I don't have to pay money for that, okay? Now, I had some special provisions in here, which is important also. I wanted to have an ambulance. I actually had an ambulance, a real ambulance, a human ambulance in there with my vet thing for it. So it was a good thing to attract the eyes. People driving by, they see the ambulance with a vet thing in it. It would be like, it would be like something, it will bring the attention to there is a veterinary hospital in here, okay? Inflatable advertising. I wanted to have that on the top, on the roof of the building. Okay, so I also put that in there. So like a big sign, inflatable, like a big balloon. Okay. I also want to have the right to put a portable advertising sign. So in the city, depends on the city. Sometimes they let you do like what we call a sandwich board. The sandwich board is like a board that stands like that from both sides. And believe it or not, this brings a lot of business. People see it, people read it, people come because of it. Okay, so you want to have that in there. The other portable ones, like the ones like big metal board, like the fixed usually put it usually on the grass. Some cities would want you to put it on and off, like remove it every 6 months. Some will say you have to remove it every day. So check with the city where you at, see what's allowed, what's not allowed. Okay. Now, something very important in here, right of first refusal. So what's the right of, and I have to talk about moving as well. I hope I don't forget that. Well, I'll talk about moving first because I will forget. So moving. So you do not want to have in here a moving right. So let's say I'm operating the Plaza A. The landlord can come and tell me, hey, Mohammed, just I want you to move from unit A to unit D. Why? Because I'm gonna use unit A for building a skyscraper. I was like, no. I was like, nope, you can't. You have. So what happened now to all the expenses that I put? What happened to 150 or 200 or $250 I put per square foot to construct this? What happened to the time that I'll be delayed doing the new construction? What happened to that much humongous loss? So you have to put a clause in there that the landlord cannot move you from one unit to the other unit. Okay, so this is very important. You also have to put in there uh, some provinces, some cities, some states would want you to not build a let's say like they're gonna demolish the whole plaza and build a humongous skyscraper. They put in there that they can kick you out in case they want that. So that's something they'll have to judge accordingly based on so many factors. But you have to keep in mind if that happens, you're losing a humongous amount of money. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. Sometimes they say, you know what, like that's not gonna happen before like 5 years or 3 years or 10 years or whatever. So, but keep in mind if they have that clause in the lease that they can kick you out because they're gonna build a bigger building or do renovation, do whatever, you're in big trouble. Same thing if a fire happens. So let's say if a fire happens in like 10% of the building, okay, they may say, you know what, we're gonna demolish the whole building. You have to get out. You can say no, okay, because sometimes you say, well, the fire has to be like more than 50% or 25% or 75%. So that fire, in case a fire happens, you have to have that term in there. When can they tell you have a good day and go? Okay. So that's the moving clause in there. So the other clause in here that I had that right of second right of refusal. So what's right of lease and of purchase? So what's right of refusal? So right of refusal. Let's say my unit is here. My neighbor unit, let's say, is a pharmacy. Okay, this pharmacy, they finished their lease. They're gonna go. So the landlord is gonna put a sign here for lease, and he's gonna have someone else come and lease that pharmacy space to do whatever they do, the hair salon, they do it, whatever they're gonna do it. Okay, I have the right. Okay, if you have the first right or the second right of refusal. So wait a minute, you can't rent this to a salon before you give me the option first of having that space and lease it to add it to my practice. Okay, so I had the second right because I had an additional unit next to me that has the first right. Then I had the second right. So if the first unit, so let's say a hair salon comes in to take that pharmacy, the dentist will say, given that the dentist has the first right, the landlord has to send him a letter and he has to say yeah or nay, he's taking it or he's declining that. And if he's declining that, he has to come to me, hey, do you want to take this pharmacy? He has to say yes or no, and then he can lease it to the hair salon. But without that, he can lease it to whoever he wants. Even though I really, really, really wanted that space to add a surgery room or to add exam rooms, to add whatever rooms I want, he still can say, no, I'm not giving that to you unless you pay me a humongous amount of money, whatever, right? So I had that first right or the second right for leasing, but I had the first right to purchase the plaza. So I said, you know what? If you find a buyer, someone is going to buy the plaza from you, I want to have the first right of refusal. So you sign the LOI from a person who's buying the plaza. You come to me, tell me, Mohammed, I'm going to sell this plaza for X amount of dollars. You want to buy it? I say yes, then it's mine, not the other guy. Okay. So if I say no, he can just sell it to whoever he wants. Okay. I also have a condition there that I can have a building. He will give me enough electric supply to give to work the X-ray. Now, in the States and in Canada, the electricity is 110 volts. To run an X-ray, you have to have a 330 volts, 360 volts, something like that. So you have to make sure that you have enough electric. So I said, you know what, landlord, you have to bring me enough electricity because you don't want to build all of that and then they find that you cannot do the X-ray. Okay. So the landlord condition. So here, so you have conditions, the landlord has conditions. Okay. So the landlord has conditions. The conditions basically that he check my financial status and give me an answer within 14 days. So let's say if we signed, both of us signed this, he has 14 days to say, I am removing condition, meaning he accept my financial status, or to say, I'm not removing condition, meaning he declined my financial status, and he tell me, I'm not giving you the lease. So you can get out of this whole thing if he says, I'm not approving your financial status, okay? He also, yeah, so it looks like this is the one condition that he had, okay? Obviously approving the architecture drawing and the electric and the HVAC and all that stuff, right? The conditions that I had here were my lawyer approved the contract. Let's say he put in the contract in there some terms that not reasonable, and I'm not accepting that. So my lawyer can say, no, I'm not accepting that. The two lawyers don't agree together. Then I have the right now to get out of this contract without having to be liable for it. Okay. And the other condition I had here that he signed all my drawings. Within 5 business days. So I gave him the drawing Monday. He has to get it back to me by Friday. So this way I can, both of us can have enough time to apply for permits and whatnot. And I think I had a condition here that I give the permit. So if it didn't give permit, there's no obligation on this whole thing is void and null. Okay. Other than that, if I sign a paper that I'm removing this condition A and condition B, I'm obligated to proceed with the lease for the 10 years, okay? Not for the additional 4 or 5s, but for the 10 years, okay? So I have to pay him monthly $27 a square foot plus common cost every single month until I find someone that subleases the space and takes it over. Now, subleasing can be costly because to find someone to sublease, you may have to pay rent for several months. You may have to have an owner a new tenant telling you, you know what, I'm gonna sublease it, but you have to pay me 6 months free rent, and you have to give me $20 a square foot TI. Now they're gonna want to treat you as a landlord, and it'll be a big loss for you to get to get out of a lease. So you make sure that you choose the right place, you make sure that you do all your due diligence, do all your work to make sure that this is the right place that you want. These are the main points that you want to see in lease. Some states, some cities, some provinces will have different rules, different requirements. So you may have to add or remove a few conditions in here. But this, in a nutshell, basically the whole idea or the most of the points that you want to have in the letter of intent, not the lease. And make sure that you have a lawyer review it before you sign it. Later on, we'll be talking about different things, how and where to find the space, and how to do the initial fixtures, the drawings, the structure, and we have a lot to talk about later on. And thank you for listening and watching. And I hope this helps. And we'll see you later in more ER Vet in Arabic in English. Okay, have a good day.